Hello and welcome to this Nutrition and Meal Planner Excel template tutorial. In this video, I've got two goals in mind and I'm excited to tackle them with you. First, we'll get to know this template, how it works, what it does, and the cool features it includes. Second, we'll build the entire template from scratch, step by step, so you can follow along and create it yourself. You'll find a free download link for the finished template in the description below. Feel free to pause, rewind, or replay this video as much as you need. My goal is to help you not just learn how to build this template, but also to pick up some handy Excel functions along the way. But before we dive in, let me give you a quick tour of what we're about to create. This template is a nutrition and meal planner designed with space for up to 100 food or dish entries. It helps you plan, track, and optimize your nutritional intake to meet your health and fitness goals. On the left, you'll find an automated dashboard featuring 5 tables. This display macronutrient breakdowns and meal summaries, making it easy to spot gaps in your nutrition and fine-tune your meal plans. On the right, you'll see the meal planning table where you can input up to 100 food or dish items along with their macronutrient details. Each entry seamlessly fits into the dashboard, and you can choose to include or exclude specific items, with all changes instantly reflected in the summaries. Now that we've covered the basics, let's dive straight into the good stuff. Now, let's go over how to use this template. Step 1 is for you to set your daily macronutrient goals in cells C7 to C10, specifying your targets for calories, fat, carbs, and protein. Step 2 is for you to configure the meals that you'll include in your plan. You have space for 4, so breakfast, lunch, dinner, and snack in this example. Step 3 is for you to list your food or dishes for one meal. For example, breakfast. You will enter the following details: the food or dish, the serving size and unit, serving quantity, and then calories, fat, carbs, and protein. For instance, if the serving size is 100 grams and nutritional values on the food label are per 100 grams, you will write down 100 grams on column K. But if you're consuming more than 100 grams or more than one serving, so in this case 120 grams or 1.2 times that serving size, then you will need to update calories, fat, carbs, and protein accordingly to reflect the actual quantity that you are consuming on that food or dish. Next, once you have finished all the food or dishes for that meal, step 4, you will repeat that process for the following meal. Step 5 is for you to use the checkboxes or dropdowns in this version to include or exclude individual line items, that is, foods or dishes, from your plan. Included items will automatically be highlighted in blue for easy reference. As you can see in this version, a dropdown includes either a check mark or a dash. And in the checkbox version, you will simply have to click on the checkbox, and then the inclusion or the exclusion will be updated automatically. Finally, you will review your plan using the summaries on the dashboard on the left, and then you will adjust your plan on the right as needed to stay on track with your macronutrient goals. And now for the main event, let's dive into the step-by-step guide to building this template from scratch. For this template, we'll break the creation process into 4 main sections. We'll start with your food and dish table here on the right. Then we'll create the dashboard layout, that is the tables and the summaries. Then we'll create the actual formulas for that dashboard. Then we'll do the conditional formatting. And then finally, we'll create the checkbox version from the drop-down version. In each section, we'll handle all the necessary cell values, formulas, and formatting step by step. To make things easier, I recommend that you use the exact same cells that I do. This way, you can compare your version with mine and quickly spot any differences if you run into any issues. And remember, always feel free to pause, rewind, or replay this video as much as you need. Let's begin. First thing I'll do is I'll create a new worksheet using this plus sign. So sheet 1 appeared. I'm going to right click and then I'm going to click on rename and I'm going to hit tutorial. Enter. Now, I'm also going to copy, just for reference, and so that they look alike, these two labels here. These are just specifying that you first define your daily goal values in cells C7, C10, and then that you use columns H to P to plan your meals accordingly. One thing I didn't mention when I was doing the quick tour is that there's actually a hidden column here. You can see that R is missing, so I just need to select S and Q, then right click, and then do unhide. Now this will come in handy and will be very important for us to update the summaries correctly. The same goes for the checkbox version. As you can see, if I unhide here, the same column appears. So let's go back to where we were. Let's start with this table. And for now, I'm just going to copy all these cells, starting on H6. I'm going to copy as values. That means that I have just inputted include, meal, food dish, and so on and so forth manually. Now for the formatting. This one has a blue background, which by the way, this palette shows because I have selected a page layout, colors, and then blue office theme. Feel free to choose whichever you like, but I suggest you stick with the blue and then change to other palettes that you like better. Now, I also have a white font color, a bolded version of my label, and then centered. And I also have a border, which I'll create later because it's the exact same border for the entire table. Well, actually, it's white for these headers. So I'll go ahead and then do white color. Make sure my line style is thin. Yes, first one. Then all borders. Now, before copying this format over, I'm going to make sure the widths match this. So first width is 7.11. I select the column, right click, select column width, 7.11. And then I do the exact same thing for the rest. 12. Then 33.89. And by the way, the column width is completely subjective and it's not linked to any rule. I just resize them for them to look better in my screen. So if something doesn't look right in yours, you can of course change it. Then 16. 12. And then the last four seem to have the exact same width. I can verify that by hitting Shift and then selecting the entire columns. Column width 15.22. I'm going to copy that value. And then I'm going to do that for this. Now we're talking. I'm going to copy these format, which you can do in two ways. You can either click on Format Painter and then select the entire range, or you can do Control Copy. And then for paste, you can go to Paste Special here and then click on Format. Or you can do Control Alt V, then hit T for the formats, which will change, by the way. You have a different language, and then hit OK or Enter, and that will do it. Next up, we just need to create the grid. So we said we have all the way to row 106 because we have 100 elements. So we'll do that. And with 100 elements, you can see that everything is centered, aligned. So we'll do P, and I hit Shift, by the way, before clicking. I'm going to hit Shift again before clicking on 106. And then for the remaining couple, I'm just going to hit Shift and then down arrow key twice. And then I'm going to do center. And then I'm going to do borders. Line style is thin, but my color is going to be now gray. And then all borders. There you go. Now for this first version, I need to do something else. I need to do the dropdown. So for the dropdown, I'm going to copy these values. You can see that the formula is unichar 10003. So this formula is just saying out of the unichars or Unicode characters that are already stored as a value, bring me the one that is coded for 10003, the number 10003. That's already programmed into your system. So if you copy this formula, unichar 10003, into row B40, that'll be the easiest way you can get a check mark. Once you have it, you can click Control Copy and then paste as value, paste special V for value, OK. And then when you select this, you can see that it's now a check mark. So it's already a character that's built in Excel. And then the dash can be here. By the way, if you're not allowed to just insert the dash, you can escape it just by preceding with a simple comma or an apostrophe, then hitting dash or minus, and it will be the exact same thing. And then included and not included, which is just a label for reference. And these, just for formatting, they are center aligned. There you go. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the entire range. I'm going to go to Data, then Data Validation, and then here on Allow, I'm going to put a list. And then on Source, I'm just going to click on Source on the box and then select these two cells. So that inserted the formula for the reference of the values that I'm allowing. I hit OK, and then as soon as I did that, this arrow appears, and then I'm able to select one of these two values. By the way, if I put the apostrophe dash, notice that it's still dash. So either way works fine. Okay, let's do the dashboard layout now. We're going to start with this first table. This table, as you can see, serves to specify my daily goal for each of the 4 macros that I'm tracking, and it's going to give me a summary of my total according to my plan on the right, what percentage of the goal that is, and then what's the completion in a graphical way. Let's do that. So again, I'm copying these values, but just as values so that I don't type them. Is as if I had typed them directly. Nothing else changes. And then I'm actually going to do the widths before continuing. So these 4 seem to have the same width. 1522. Again, widths as well as row heights are pretty much arbitrary. So you can choose another value if you want. It's just something that looked okay on my screen. Then for B, it seems a bit higher. Column width, yeah, it's larger, 1944. I just copied it. Right click, and then type 1944. And then column A and column G are a bit more narrow. I can see what's the exact width, 156. So I copy that. And then I come back, column width 156. And then once I have this, I can copy and then paste special Control-Alt-V after hitting Control-Copy on the cell that I want to copy. And then carry on the width. Okay. There you go. Now I'm also going to type the macronutrients, these 4. So a trick here, I could type them, or I mean, I just copied them, but I could type them. Or the other thing is, since I already have them here, I can copy, and then I can do a paste special, values, and then select the option that says transpose here at the bottom. Then click OK, and that also does it. Now for daily goal and for all the other headers, if you look at it, it seems very, very similar to this. Has the borders, has the bold, has the alignment. The only thing that's different is the color. So I'm actually going to be super lazy. And then I'm going to hit on Format Painter. I'm going to copy the format. And then the only thing that I'm going to modify is the actual background. So this seems to be this green. And then this gray, let's check which one is it, the last one. So I'm going to select 3 of those and then gray. That way you can save a lot of time when designing your templates. Now this also looks very similar to the rest, but only the background color is changed. So I'm going to do that exact same thing. And so now the background color seems to be this green. Let's see. It is. And then it's also bolded. You can hit Ctrl B after selection, or you can go and hit this little B here. There you go. And now I'm missing the grid. So this one's pretty similar for calories, etc. And then this one's also similar, but now it has a gray background color. Now the distinction between white and non-white background is that the whites will be values that you will input, grays will be formulas, so you won't have to modify those. They will be updated automatically. Now one last thing, let's check for formatting for the numbers. So let's just copy the same, 2000, then 55, sorry, 275, and 125. And again, these numbers are just illustrative. So disregard this if they are like super way outside your actual goals. Now, as you can see, I'm missing a decimal. So the way I do that, I go here, number, and then I decrease 1 decimal. Now these two, this is the same. I'm just gonna recolor it. And then this is actually a percentage. And then we'll come back to this later, since this is a conditional formatting. Now, let's do this subheader. But now notice one thing. This is actually a formula. And I actually lied to you, and this is also a formula. Why did I do that? Because if I changed any of these cells, for example, if I don't want to specify the K, cal, and I just want the uppercase C for calories, or what if my fat and carbs and protein are not in grams but in other units, whatever it is, I just need to change them here, and everything else will be updated if everything is referencing those cells. So let's actually do that. I'm going to do this equals calories, then fat, then carbs, and protein. And I'm going to actually do the same for the header that goes below. For now, I'm just going to transpose as values. I'm going to copy the format with the Format Painter, which, by the way, I have a shortcut that when I hit Alt-1, it's already, as you can see, selected the function in my mouse. So I can do it quickly. And then I'm going to update the formulas. So calories, fat, carbs, protein. There you go. Now, we can add this meal breakdown table. So I'm just going to copy the values. Again, we'll do the formatting together. And so after you have wrote down this, you just bold, Control B, and then you can also put in italics with Control I. Or you can actually go here and then select the I. And then the next ones look very similar to this, as you can see. So Alt 1 for Format Painter. I select this. And then what about total? Total looks different. So I'm just going to borrow this, but I'm actually going to borrow a general format. And then it's probably bolded. It is. There you go. And now it's only formats for numbers, like the total plan. So let's actually see if this works. It does. So I'm going to copy these with Alt 1 Format Painter. I'm going to select the entire thing. And then for the last row, I'm going to bold it. There you go. And now it's going to be super quick for this one as well, because it's very similar. So I'm actually going to copy the exact same thing. I'm just going to hit Control Copy for the entire selection, and then Control V. Now this breakdown has a percentage in parentheses. And these ones are not bolded, and they're in gray. Now for this, I also just copy the values here. Breakfast, but I don't have to write the formula because I already have it here. So I just drag it either with Control V or Control Alt V formulas. It's the same thing. That way, if I change any of the meals here, they will be updated here as well. Now we have something very similar for this, but it's actually referring to the meals. So we can copy, let's copy these so that I'm not cheating, you know. And then it's on 27, yes. Now, obviously the formula is a bit off, but we'll do breakfast, lunch, dinner, and the snack. Again, if you update the values here, if I trace the formulas, you can see that it's traced here, and then this is traced here. You could also have done this. You could have said, hey, this equals breakfast, like the original, then lunch, dinner, and then the snack. But since one is pointing to the other one, and then this is pointing to this, it's going to be the same thing, so it doesn't really matter. And by the way, that little trick, you can go to formulas, and then here in formulas, you can click on trace dependents or trace precedents, depending on what you want. And once you're done with your debugging, you can click on remove arrows to disappear everything. Now let's go back and check. And I have a very similar formula for macros breakdown and macros breakdown percentage. So I'm actually going to copy the table that I just created all the way here. Let's see which cell. 28. 28, Control V. And then I just need to update this so that it's calories. And then I'm actually going to freeze this reference, and you'll see why in a bit. By freezing, by the way, I just hit F4 in your keyboard, and that adds this $sign before the letter that is the column and before the number, which is the row. That means that it doesn't matter if I copy this formula, whatever in the worksheet, it will always be B7 for the reference. So for example, here's B7, and I copy it here, is B7 again. What happens if I take out that? So naturally it just writes B7 whenever you select, and I just copy it here. Now it's changed. It's now C10. So it moved one column to the right because that's where I copied the formula, and it moved 1, 2, 3 rows down because that's exactly what I did. So if you freeze your references, you won't have to worry about whether they're going to move or not. And by the way, you can freeze only columns and or rows. So if you hit, for example, F4 again, that way row 7 will be frozen, but column B can move. Now column B cannot move, but row 7 can move, and this is the default state. So calories, then fat, then carbs, and protein. Now, why did I do that? Because when I copy this table below in 34, I think I'm on the right one, yes. It still says calories, fat, carbs, and protein, and I don't have to update those formulas. Now the only thing I need to change is here and say macros breakdown, and then here again macros. Oops, sorry about that. There you go. I think our layout is complete. Okay, that was a bit boring, but necessary. Now let's do the interesting stuff. Let's go and do the dashboard formulas. So let's start with the very first one. For the very first one, these are already data. And by the way, I think we didn't do something important. What happens if I delete these? Yeah, they're in yellow, saying, hey, there's something that's needed for an input. So how do I do that? I actually go to home after selecting this, and then I'm going to go to conditional formatting, highlight, and then I'm going to just click on whichever. Greater than, I'm just going to hit 0 for the example, and then I'm going to select the yellow, which is the one that I like using. Again, conditional formatting, manage rules, then edit the rule, and then on cell value here at the bottom, format only cells with blanks. Okay, apply okay. And so now, if I delete this, there you go. Or if I delete just one, same thing. Okay, so now what we want is first to actually do this little thing here on column R, because this one is what's going to tell you if something is included or not in your plan. And as you can see, the way something is included is if you select that check mark here, and it's telling you just compare the value of this against my included symbol. So actually, you can change the check mark to whatever you want, and it will be updated here in your dropdown, and then you can use that symbol. So we're going to add this hidden to column R. Hidden. Actually, I think it was all uppercase. Yes. By the way, there's a cool formula that says upper, and now it's completely uppercase. And then you can do control copy, paste special values, and there you go. You don't have to retype it if that's something that you prefer. And for column Q, you can copy this, then copy the width, and there you go. And now this is simple just in red, just so that you don't forget to hide it. And it's not doing anything other than showing what's included and what's not. So it's better hidden, really. There you go. Oh, it's actually not as aggressive. So a bit more dark. And then last thing is the formula. So if this equals my reference, frozen reference, right? I mean, it's a fixed reference, but I want to call it frozen. And then I'm going to drag this all the way to 106. And then I can hit either Control V or Control Alt and then formulas, whatever you prefer. But I'm actually going to color this in gray because it's a formula. And I'm going to Control Copy and then Control V or Control Paste. That way the formula is kept. You can see that it's always doing a reference to my fixed included checkmark. And also the format is updated. There you go. Now, finally, let's see how this works. So, total plan. And by the way, so that we know that we're targeting the same numbers in both, I'm actually going to go ahead and then copy this entire thing here. Now, what I suggest you do is download this and then copy the values, because if not, you're going to take a while just selecting everything. But If you want to do that, you can also pause this video and then input the values. Now, once we've done that, let's check out how do we do this total plan. So what exactly is this table telling me? Because we just basically put all the values there and we didn't stop to explain what exactly we're doing. But let's just take a look at this. We're saying my calories, my daily goal is 2000. What's my total plan? Essentially, I want to add up my column M because we know that calories go here, calories go here. So even if I change this label here, it will be updated here, and then everything here will match and trace back to this row. So what I'm going to do is just going to add up my entire column because this will tell me what are my total calories in my plan. Whoops, something's not adding up. What is it? My numbers are not exactly the same. Oh, but that's just the formatting. Okay. Let's just correct that. First is number decrease. Okay, my numbers are the same. And now something's off. What is it? Let's see. If I go here, I have something more complicated than just a sum. And why is that? Because I want to consider only the ones that are included in my plan. If I include this one as well, you can see that now I have the exact same numbers for total plan. Right? So let me explain how this formula works. I'm going to copy it right now. I'm going to actually select the dash here for banana and breakfast. And then I'm going to copy the formula. So let's go step by step. You're already familiar with the range M7, M106 because that's my calories. But now what else did I do? I did a sum product. A sum product is essentially just two vectors whose elements are being multiplied one by one, and then the result of that multiplication is added up. So essentially I'm just using a sum product as a sum if, which you can also do if you want, but I like the sum product. So the sum product, what I'm doing is my first array or vector is my calories, and then my second one is actually something that I'm doing so that I end up with ones and zeros. Essentially, if banana is not included, then 124.6, I want that to be multiplied by 0. Everything else is going to be multiplied by 1. And so when I add them all up, everything's going to be the same except for this one, which will be 0. So I'm going to compare what I have on my hidden column, on column R, against the value true. And then I need to multiply that by 1, because if not, this array is just going to be a bunch of truths. And sometimes Excel has a hard time with that. And so for me to help it, I'm going to multiply 1. And by multiplying it by 1, everything that's true is going to be true, and everything that's false is going to be 0. So I hit enter, and now we have it. You could also have done, for example, a sum ifs. I prefer ifs, by the way, instead of just if. And then my sum range is essentially this. And then after that, my criteria is this. That's my range, and criteria is true. And that's probably a simpler way to do it. But again, it's just that I prefer the sum product. But you can do whatever you want. If you want to do this formula, that's fine as well. I'm going to undo it for now. Okay. Now, this one's pretty easy, right? We just have to divide my total planned against my goal. And that's 76. But there's a slight problem. What happens if I don't specify a goal? Well, there's an error. So how do I deal with that? I can do if error, and then if there's something wrong because something's divided by 0, then put nothing. Double quotes essentially is blank or nothing. So there you have it. Let's see if that's actually the formula that I used. Oh no, it's the other way around. So The other way around that you can also do this is not by an if error, but also more preemptively saying if my denominator is not blank, then actually go ahead and do the operation, otherwise blank. That's the other way you can do it. And you don't need to check for these 7 because 0 divided by anything other than 0 is always 0, so you're good with that. Now, since we have already this formula, and it's only row and row, we can copy it and then paste as formula or paste the entire thing. Doesn't really matter because the format is the same, but I'm going to do formulas just out of my habit. And then for this, you're going to just copy and paste it directly. You just need to modify the ranges. So I copy the formula, and then this range, I just need to modify for fat, and then do the same thing for carbs, and the same thing for protein. Now you could get smart and do like a matrix formula in which you search the entire thing and then you only take the column that's corresponding to the calories or the fat or the carbs or the protein. But that's more complicated, so let's just leave it like that, a bit manual. It was not much of a burden to change that anyway, so there you have it. Now let's do the meal breakdown. So what this table is doing, and again, this completion, we'll come back to it in the conditional formatting piece. Now, meal breakdown. Meal breakdown is saying these are the headers, right, for this section. So I essentially have calories, fat, carbs, and protein for meal breakdown by meal and meal breakdown in percentage. That means that what I want here is not just the sum of this entire column. I want 2 things. I want the sum of this column whenever the meal is breakfast and whenever it has been included in my plan. So how do I do that? I can actually borrow the same formula that I used here, and I just need to have one condition. Again, if you did the sum ifs, it's going to be potentially simpler because you don't have this thing. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another condition, then specify not R, but actually I, and then not true, but actually breakfast. And I want to keep this reference fixed for the column. That might not be as useful because, well, it's actually going to be useful, and you'll see why. So let's keep the reference fixed for B, as in breakfast, but the row is going to be kept free. That means if I go down 1, now it's going to be B15, so the lunch. But if I go to the right, it's going to still be B, and 14, obviously, because I didn't move down. So when I do this, and then I select, and then I just select the entire thing, boom. What happened? Well, something wrong happened. I need to correct a bit of an error. What I need to correct is that 7 and 106 need to be fixed. And then I can update the entire thing once again. And then let's see if I have the same numbers. I do. Okay. So what are we doing here? You're already familiar with the sum product and this weird condition that I like. If you have the sum ifs, you only have to add another condition in which this range is equals to this criteria. But I'm doing the exact same thing. I'm adding another vector for multiplication, which is essentially going to be ones and zeros. And then I'm going to say whenever breakfast or lunch or snack or dinner equals breakfast, so the value for the meal equals this value, then please add a 1, and if not, then add a 0, and multiply it by the true or false, and then multiply by the calories. And then since I kept my reference for 7 and 106 fixed, then that means that if I go here, it's still 7 and 106. But you can see that now because I moved to the right, it's now carbs. If I go here, it's now protein. And then if I go to fat, it's fat because my reference was kept so that my columns could move, but not my rows. And the two arrays for meal as well as for the hidden column, that's just comparing included versus not included. They're always the same, so that's why they're fixed. And B16, which in this case was B14, allows me to move from row to row, so 14, 15, 16. But when I move to the right, it's still B. So I'm always comparing against this column. I'm just varying the row. And now the total, I just need to add a sum. And then since I already have this, I can select the entire thing and then click Ctrl right, and this will drag the formula to the right. And let's see, I have the same numbers. I also had the sum, and then I have this weird thing as well. Okay. Now, one thing I forgot to mention, for this meal, there's also not a breakdown, but a validation that needs to be added. Data validation, and then I'm gonna do the list, and then I'm gonna select these values. That way, whenever I change these values, let's say you have breakfast, you have meal 1, and then dinner and meal 2 for whatever reason, you will be able to select those here as well. And they will update, the dropdown will update if you update these values. Now remember, if I just change this to meal 2, just for the sake of it, now lunch is no longer included, but it's still showing because I updated it after I had made my selection. So come back and do it manually here if you change anything after you have done those selections. Now, how do we know this is correct? This number ties back to this number. The same for fat, the same for carbs, right? And then the same for protein. There you go. And now this table is just doing the exact same thing, but it's showing me the percentage against my total. So that means out of my total calorie intake, right, which was 342 for breakfast, 688 for lunch, and so on and so forth, what's the percentage that I consumed in the breakfast? So what I do is I do an equals, I do my breakfast, and then I divide it by the total. And I have a percentage. But that won't work because if I move any of these formulas, these will both move. And I want this to be fixed, but only row 18 because I want to be able to move across the different macros. So I just hit the $sign before the 18. And when I do that, everything now ties. And I can actually do a sum. I actually can copy this formula. Let's see if the percentage is already there. I copy the entire row, right, for the totals. And then I'm actually going to do a copy paste special formulas. And no, the format was not there, so I just add percentage, and there you go. Everything naturally adds up to 100% because this is just a breakdown of how I have distributed each of the macros across my different meals. Now, another thing, what happens if everything's empty? This will show an error because it's going to divide something by 0. So again, we need to protect this. If error, then the value is naturally something that happens without errors, right? This is the number that you want to show. And then if something goes wrong, I just add show nothing. Then I can update this table accordingly. Control V. There you go. So everything has an if error now. And that's just preceding the formula that I had already specified. Okay. Now, something very similar is going to happen for macros breakdown and macros breakdown percentage. But hey, you can tell that this is pretty much the exact same table, right? You have this column and then, these rows and then these columns. And now this table has the columns in the rows and then the rows in the columns, but it's doing the exact same thing. So there's a easy way to do that instead of having to manually go fetch and then doing that weird sum product thing that we did. We just need to transpose the matrix. So we do transpose, And then we're not including the totals because the totals would have to be here on a column that I don't have. And then after I have specified my range, I'm just going to hit enter. And this array creates this automatically. So how do I check this? Carbs in dinner, 40.7. And then we go here, dinner, carbs, 40.7. And there you go. Another example. In lunch, I consumed 688.5. So calories for lunch, 688.5. And so that simplifies my life. And the only thing I need to do now is to divide my calories against what? Against the total of my plan. Because I want to specify how much of my calories I had in my breakfast. So my calories divided by my plan. And then that in percentage format. All right. So one small problem. If we want to move this formula around, we have to freeze something here. What should we freeze? We want to freeze the row? No, we want to freeze the column. We want to freeze the column because that way we will always take this value, which is calories, fat, carbs, protein. Calories, fat, carb, proteins. So the same order. If I just go down, I just need the following row, but I don't need to change columns. So I freeze the column, and then I'm going to add the if error, because if something's not specified, there's going to be an error, and it's going to look ugly. So if something goes wrong, show nothing, enter, and then I can simply select the entire table, and then I can do a fancy trick. I can do Control RD. That drags my formula to the right and then drags it down. And there you go. I think that concludes. I think it does. Oh, one little thing. No, everything's good. Okay, so we've done the formulas, we've done the layout. Now let's talk about conditional formatting. And we'll start with this. It's going to be pretty simple, actually. I just want to show a graph of the percentage goal, right? That's what I have here. To do that, what I do is I select my range, conditional formatting in your home of the ribbon. Then I'm going to add a new rule, or I can go to manage rules and then add new rule. It's the same thing. And then here you have data bar under format style. And then I'm actually going to specify my minimum number for 0 and a maximum. Where is maximum number? 1. That way, my sort of like axis, which you won't see, is always going to go from 0 to 1. So nothing beyond 1 is going to be shown. If you have a 120%, it's just going to assume that you filled it up. It's not going to show if you went beyond, because I want every single one to just show me if I completed the target. If, for example, I didn't specify this and something went off to 120 and something went to just 100, it would look as if one of my targets was not met just because the 120 is offsetting my axis. So I'm going to put it a maximum of 1, and then I'm going to add a solid bar, which is just a border just for the looks. And you can change the color if you want. And then one thing, I need to always click on show bar only. Then click OK, and nothing happened, just because I have to copy these values with a formula. There you go. The formula is just essentially saying equals my percentage. And remember, if something goes off, my percentage is going to show nothing. So if I don't have anything, there you go. And because these are not relative, as soon as I deleted this, the actual value for this graph did not affect the others. That's also an important reason why I selected a minimum and a maximum. Okay, now the other format that I'm missing is this format. So this is pretty simple. What we'll do is we're going to select this. This is my range. Again, I'm going to do a new rule. Let's actually now go through here so that you can see that it's the same. And now my formula is going to be equals this, because essentially this is telling me when I have included it. So equals my column R, which is going to be hidden. But then remember, when you have conditional formatting, Excel will also drag the formula down or to the right whenever evaluating the cells in your range. So do I want 7 to be kept always fixed? No. But I do want the R to be kept fixed, because when it's evaluating whether or not to add the format to, say, the column N for fat, I still want it to look at column R. I don't want it to go beyond that column, but I want the row to be updating because each row is going to be independent. And then the only thing that's missing is the format, specifically the fill. Now, I think we'll have to check, but let's say this is the fill that I'm using. So I hit OK, and then apply, and then OK. And there you have it. And let's just check that, yeah, it's the same color. One more conditional formatting that I want to add. Remember, these values are there for me to specify. If I want to change them, it's for us to customize, whether we have different meals or whether we want different headers or names for the macros. But I do want them there. If they're not specified, something should happen. So I'm going to just highlight them. In this case, greater than something, doesn't really matter. I'm actually going to use the red fill now. And then I'm going to go to the conditional formatting in manage rules. Then I'm going to select this, edit rule. And then I'm just going to specify blanks. So if any of these is blank, it's going to be highlighted in red. And as you can see, the range is already updated because I selected all my concerning cells. And then I'm going to apply. And then OK. And then if I delete any of these, right, the red color appears. Same for this. There you go. And then if I delete this, yellow. And then if I delete this, then there you go. All zeros, no errors. And then the highlights are updated automatically. I'm going to undo these. Also those changes. There you go. And now, before we create the checkbox version, I'm going to add one more thing. If you look at this, I like adding the gray color background because it looks neat. And I also like taking out grid lines because it looks more clean. The grid lines we'll do at the end of the video. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to select my entire range. And then I'm going to hit this gray background color. And then I'm going to do that for every single cell. Now, I'm going to speed this up, but that's exactly the same procedure I'm doing. Actually, this is not bolded. Okay, they look the same. So now, the final piece, checkboxes. Now, I'm going to duplicate this tutorial tab. So right-click, move or copy, create a copy and move to the end in this case so that I can compare it against the checkbox version. By renaming, I can just double-click and then type it, checkbox. I could also do right-click and then rename, whichever works the same. And so, what do I need to do? As you can see, the only checkboxes that I have are on column H. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my column H, and then first select it. Then I'm going to delete it with just delete. And then I'm going to go to data. And then I'm going to data validation, clear all, OK. Once I've done that, I can actually just delete these 4 as well. And then afterwards, I'll go ahead and select my range, go to Insert, and you have Checkbox here. It's super simple. You just have to click on it and everything else is done. And then I'm just going to change the color to this darker blue. And then I need to update some formulas. First, this one's no longer a comparison against this value. This one is just simply saying if this is true, equals H7. So why this works is because whenever a checkbox is checked, its value is true. Whenever it's unchecked, its value is false. So we update the formula, copy formulas. There you go. And then also we need other formulas to be updated. So let's check which ones we're missing. So if we select the entire thing and then we hit spacebar, everything gets selected, and I just need to unselect banana for these to be the same. And let's see. One thing we can do is we can click here, then go to formulas, and then trace the dependents. And as you can see, all of these are dependent on my hidden. But because these are depending already on true, as soon as I updated this, it updated automatically. Because I'm not referencing column H, I'm referencing column R. So nothing needs to be changed. And then I can hit remove arrows. And there you go. Now in the conditional formatting, I can also go to manage rules. Then hit this worksheet will show every single row. And then as you can see, the only cell that's being referenced that has to do with checkboxes is again column R. But since I already updated the formula correctly, then this format is also going to work properly because my formula is already working. And none of these formulas in the dashboards are referencing column H directly. So that was pretty easy. But remember, the only way this is going to work if your Excel version has checkboxes, which was introduced in June 2024. So if you don't see a checkbox in your insert region here, it means that it won't work. And that's why I've created the drop-down version. That's a pretty cool job. Well done. Now, before we say our goodbyes, I want to talk about one extra topic for this template, and that is how to add more foods or dishes into your meal planning table. That is how to add more rows because we only have 100. So we'll just follow a simple 4-step process that you can copy if you want. First is we just need to insert the rows. That is before the last one. That is before 106. So starting on 105. And then after row 45. Why row 45? Because if I go to the tutorial, not the checkbox version, I still have something here. So just to avoid messing with any of the formatting or any of the references, I'm just going to hit on 45. So below 45, between 45 and 105, you can add a row wherever you like. So let's just say I'm going to go to the checkbox version because it looks cooler. I'm going to go row 50, and then I'm going to hit insert, right-click insert. So now row 50 has been inserted. Okay, that's step 1. Now, step 2 is that if you have the hidden column R, as I have at the beginning, you have to unhide it. But now I don't have it hidden because I haven't hid it. So what you can see now is that there's no formula here. So once you have unhidden your column R, if that's the case, then step 3 is for you to copy the formula to the cells that you have inserted. In this case, I just inserted one row, so it's just going to be 1. But if you have, like several rows inserted, the easiest thing is for you to go to the top, then hit Control Copy, then go all the way down until you get there, and then hit Control V or just copy the formulas. And optional, you can hide this again. So you can do the right click and then hide. And there you go. And then as you can see, I now have until 107 because it's now being inserted. And the last thing, as I said, you can go to View and then take out the grids, go to Tutorial, Columnar, select, right click, hide, View, Grid Lines. And there you go. Now that's a finished version of the dropdown. Oh, I'm actually also going to hide this, but this is the example. So I already done that. And then this is the finished version of the checkbox version. Well, nicely done. I'm glad you've come this far. Congrats. And that's a wrap. Thanks so much for tuning in today. I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, don't forget to give it a thumbs up or drop a comment below to let me know what you think. If you're into Excel and want to learn more, consider subscribing to my channel. I'll be posting more tutorials and courses to help you level up your spreadsheet skills and create awesome templates and tools. And hey, if you're in the hunt for more productivity and planning tools, check out my store. The link's in the description. Until next time, stay productive, stay awesome.